So I've got a 5-page speech, like any government public servant. But I promise you, I'll try and only refer to it because also, hello, oh, thank you. You know, with age, my eyesight has gotten so poor. I didn't see you walking in, but yeah, I'm happy to see you. So I'm really happy that I'm actually among colleagues and friends who I know in the industry. Often I'm sitting with other colleagues in the public sector. I think there the challenges are very different. We are often under pressure. Everyone thinks government and public servants are stealing money. So everyone's always worried, no, you can't say you know me, you can't say, so we're always worried because we are constantly trying to demonstrate to South Africa that we are doing our best with the challenges that we face. Kaho, I want to first greet the program director, Renee. I'm assuming that would be you, Amasa, and the Amasa Council, and its members who are here, industry leaders and champions of the media sector, those who are on the side of advertising, fueling the industry, the media owners, and those who participate in the industry at various levels. I want to greet colleagues who are also here. I want to first start by declaring my biases, because I think they will help you to understand the point of view that I have and I bring. I love radio. It's my first place. Radio's everything. Podcasts are not going to kill radio. And also, I work for a media development and diversity agency. It's a public entity. We are part public, part private in a way in the country that we have, where we are funded by the commercial broadcasters through something called Universal Access Levy, and we get some part of our funding from the government. And I think what I want to emphasize is the importance of these public-private partnerships to help us build and drive the country's economy, more especially within the media space. We exist because the chapter 2 of the Constitution, subsection 16, says there's freedom of expression in this country, and there's a need for us to have vehicles that bring that to life. Access to information is very key for people. I think often when we speak about access to information, we speak about the news and other content, but even an advert on radio and on TV is information because it helps the consumer to make a better decision. And I don't know if we're advocating enough for there to be sufficient advertising that is more educational on the various media platforms. Now, today's topic, the cost of hesitation, what South African media risks by moving too slow. I want to first say, actually, I want to advise you to move fast slowly, because what we don't want is to leave South Africans behind. We want to bring along on the journey where we are recognizing media to a level where we have taken enough South Africans forward. But I would also like to say that we live in a country where, not just a country, I would say a world where technology has impacted how we experience the world and information. I have now observed something, and I'll use there's a phone here, I'll use this phone here. So when I drive in Johannesburg, pedestrians are doing this. And I'm wondering, are they listening to voice notes? Is your whole journey, they have an interaction on the phone, conversing, perhaps using a platform like WhatsApp. And then, what about the drivers? I have to try and do it exactly as I've seen it. So the phone is often this side, and then there's the steering wheel there, and then here we are. And sometimes I want to stop and hoot, and stop doing this. So we have changed our own reality to experience our world through the phone. Even there, you are watching football. You can't even experience the feel of being in the stadium because there's going to be a viewer. When the camera goes there, they are also on the camera. They're here looking at the story as well. I think what this has done is shift the media platforms, but I don't know if it has changed media completely. In fact, I want to argue that the media, which is a medium in which information is carried, does not change, has not changed. What has changed and has a potential to change even further is our thinking, our ability to tell stories and how we can refine those, taking advantage of the platforms that we have. I think we've perhaps spent a lot of time building platforms. We have built media empires. We have your, let's use MultiChoice, biggest funder of the NCDA, so I absolutely respect them. You have MultiChoice, which has invested in infrastructure and technology that enables for you to view their content or content that airs on that platform through subscription. And when we are looking at that model from the outside, it's a subscription-based model. But we also know that it's not the platform that you want, it's the story that's told on the platform. I think there's been many arguments some have made, maybe even some of you, some even boldly so, which worries me. I don't watch SABC anymore. I'm not paying this TV license. And I want to say that's besides the point, because what we need is a diverse media, and there's room for all plurality. Where we come from is that infrastructure-based media to where we are saying there's so much diversity, we now need to think about all of the other factors when we make a decision on which platform to go with. I'm sure you will agree with me when I say credibility is key. You want to link your brands with a media platform that you can trust. Now, I have nothing against the influencers, and I pray SARS catches up as action because we are a growing economy, and as we do have a quick because that will also assist us in building the kind of mechanisms we require to build the trust, because we know these are businesses, and no person operating a business wants to lose a business because they got into a shady deal advertising a business somewhere in Russia or a brand that they themselves did not know about. But one of the biggest benefits we have with traditional media for a long time is that the access or the barriers to enter that market was so high. It was near impossible for any of us to get into it. You would have to think twice before you even wanted to get into radio. In fact, they will tell you to get into commercial radio, you must go start at community media first. To become someone known on TV, you would have had to invest so much, from your own talent development to finding an agency that's going to put you in front of the decision makers who will say, you are talent. What the new technology or the new platforms have done was to break all of those barriers, which means any person here is a content creator, is a broadcaster, is a publisher, because technology has brought it to us. But what does this mean for us? And us, I mean people who are looking to link brands with another brand so that you can carry out your message. But what does it mean also for the South African media? And what does it mean for the South African? And I think for me, this is why it's so important that perhaps the hesitation has been mainly on how we approach these media platforms, and not necessarily how these platforms have changed, because they continue to change. Every week there's something different. We are experimenting with something like this. Netbank, I'm not picking on you, but we are doing Ubuntu Land. It's gonna work, and then the short form video is working. Actually, you know what, we are not so sure. Long form video seems to be working. We wanna be on those exploratory and discussion, engaging type of podcasts. So what I do want to say is that this is a time for us to reflect on the kind of landscape we want, but also we shouldn't stifle the new platforms that have come in. However, I also want to say, I did say I work for government, so policy is very important. I also want to say that perhaps we must also think about how do we regulate the spaces. Regulation, by the way, doesn't mean government entering in to regulate. Many of you, if you haven't yet, I encourage you to, please go and read the audio and audiovisual white paper on media and media privacy. It's published by the DCDT, Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, by Minister Soli Malatsi. It's open for comments. And you will see that it's anchored on digitalization and the need to move South Africa forward, but it's moving from a platform-based regulation space to one that's focusing on content, the information. And there's great emphasis on, yes, there has to be some form of organizing and some form of accountability for the kind of new platforms that we have. I do want to say, though, we have to celebrate the new platforms, also largely because Pat is here, and I want to keep his friendship so he can buy me coffee. Is that I want to say, in 1970, an American poet and activist, Gil Scott Heron, declared the revolution will not be televised. And when we think about it today, is yes, the revolution is not televised. Why? Because the structured media, whether broadcast or publish, has an editor. You will never know the biases of the editor because they don't tell you, actually, you know, these are the views that we hold or that I hold. This is the environment that I come from. This is how I view the world. Because we tell stories through a lens that we have chosen. However objective we want to be, we just cannot help ourselves. It's just how we are as humans. And that will not change. We will always see the world through a particular lens. What we see with platforms like podcasting, vlogging, and even the influencers using multitudes of platforms is that it allows for us to see a world that a more conservative, for example, editor might have not allowed for it to air for whatever reason. But it also means that there has to be some balance that we need to strike, because I want to argue that we still need traditional media, particularly in a country like South Africa. And maybe by a show of hand, let's see how many people here are media buyers, planners, SCM, who's making decisions on where you're going to buy? Sky Patang, I'm not going to ask a difficult question. I'm going to make a plea. And my plea is, you have a responsibility to make sure that the SABC does not fail. You have a responsibility to make sure that community media does not fail. You have a responsibility to make sure all of the other media spaces in the country do not fail. Yes, we know that your new and online platforms cost you less. You can prove the numbers. Trust me, I'm sure the colleagues at the BRC are solving all of our problems in terms of audience measurement. What's here? She'll tell us more about that. But what I do want to say is, what has also come with these new media platforms, which requires us to really be innovative with our thinking and where we are placing the brands, is the need to fact check. Because even your adverts now need to be fact checked. Because someone could be claiming to be a brand that you are representing and be advertising a service with a link and would have cloned everything. And they would be doing harm in the community that we are in. I want to say that it also calls on us to move from the positions that we find ourselves in to being a little bit more active in playing our civic duty, not just as businesses, but as individuals who I want to believe love this country and want to see it succeed. Trust me, I'm almost done. I'm going to skip many of these pages, but some are very important, like the MDDA mandate. I have to share what that is. What I do want to say is, while we work on policy reform, my call is that we don't wait for government to create and develop policy. Nothing prohibits us from co-creating with government and making suggestions, such as forming an ombudsman for podcasts or even the influencers, so that we find a way to hold them accountable for the content that they share. The industry can regulate it completely. It can be self-regulated. You can decide how it works. We've seen this work with the Press Council, so it's not something that's new also here in South Africa. I am, however, just saying that these challenges are also not just unique to South Africa. We have a long way to go. Again, to emphasize the draft white paper on audio-visual media services and online safety. The closing date is the 26th of September. Please look at it and make comments. It is recommending changes which I think will have impact in how media is consumed, content is developed in this country, and I think plays a key role in the spaces that we are all in. One of the challenges that I think we find in South Africa, we often, when we speak about the democratic project, we are often referring to casting our votes and that's it. But what we've also seen is a decline in the casting of the votes. Fewer and fewer people are voting. But I think that it's important for us to also think about our own civic duty in ensuring that we influence policies in the directions we want it to go to, so that we end up with the type of government that we need, especially within the media space, because the cornerstone of this constitution, media freedom of and expression, is also very important. I wish I knew how to wink, because there's someone I wanted to wink for, but I failed this dismally while still growing up. I want to also say that it's also been very important for us to remember that we have a responsibility to educate. The new media platforms are technology-enabled and technology-powered. What Statistics South Africa says is that they are seeing a decline in the number of people having radios in their households, which means accessing radio through your FM and AM is not the traditional, is not the standard way of listening to radio today. There's a shift towards listening and consuming content on using their mobile devices. And these are the conversations that we are saying is, can we understand the South African better by utilizing statistics like those that come from Stats SA? And so if more and more South Africans are accessing their content using their smartphone or phones, how are we delivering the content to them? Because we know that the reality is, while these platforms are digital and while these platforms are available to all of us, they are also developed in the English language. And we know that this is not a standard for South Africa. I can say now today, as I use this language called English, that it's my 5th language along the line. I've had to learn it and use it as a professional language. If I had to use my default language, I'm sure I would be so much more proficient. What I do then want to say is, until we get to a point where the infrastructure required enable all South Africans to be available on the digital platforms, then we must still take along those who are consuming content using radio and using their publishing platforms. And I'm almost done, I promise you. This is second last point. Is that what we've seen, or what our colleagues from across the borders are saying, I mean, across the shores, is that what they are seeing is a decline in traditional media, but a growth in hyper-local media and grassroots media. That more and more people are using their community radio stations to access information that relates to them. Because on their various platforms, the information they receive is largely about everything and anything else, but never really about the things that matter to them. And so this means that even in our approach, while we encourage the social media content creators or those who create content on various platforms, we must also be encouraging them to not just only use the English language, but also use languages that connect with various communities, but also use indigenous language. There's knowledge you cannot transfer, unfortunately, with the English language. Might I even add, you might even have to go to the mountain to access some knowledge, because that's how privileged the knowledge is and difficult to access. I want to conclude by speaking about the Media Development and Diversity Agency. For a long time, our focus has been inward, and our focus has mainly looked at what do we do for community media. And what we have been looking to do is, who can we partner with to strengthen the community media sector or the grassroots media level, but also to say that of those who are doing well on the various media platforms, is there further value you can add? We appreciate the universal access levy they contribute, but they can also contribute through skills, transfer of knowledge, very key. I think while I am very grateful for this opportunity, I also want to say we must never forget, is this Tiongongi? Oh, yes, it is. I got you. Thank you. I have not seen it in a while. What I do want to say is that it is also very important for us to introspect, look inward. Our thinking, in fact, our senses, I do not imagine God is going to change the creation, or that we are going to somehow evolve and develop new senses, which means the way we are presently telling the stories, you are using sound, you are using visual, and some have even progressed to using sense because we want to appeal to all South Africans as well, is not likely going to change. But these forums and platforms we are on are definitely going to change because they must change. And they will change after however many years that we have. Technology has just accelerated all of those changes. What I do want to say, including artificial intelligence, I just didn't want to get into AI because then we are starting a whole new journey onto a whole new world of where we are going as a country and in fact as a world, is that we are the only ones proven to generate new content and new ideas. We, the people, not AI. AI is informed by what we are adding on. And perhaps in future we will see those. But I think we have to really rely on our abilities to think and to be critical on things and to innovate and find new ways of telling stories, but also bringing everyone along. I don't think we should be intimidated by the new platforms that should be coming along. What we should be looking at, however, is how do we best utilize these platforms? I'm going to end my speech there by saying, let's hurry slowly, but also we should not be delaying in the things that shouldn't worry us, on whether there's a TikTok today and tomorrow there's something else, or the president of the US is using Truth Social, therefore we must all be on that platform. I think what we should look at is how do we connect and build messages that resonate and link brands to consumers who not just want to make purchasing decisions, but also need to know, so they make better decisions and more informed decisions. Ka hoo, ke rata ho leboha haholo. Thank you.